are talking about Hunter x Hunter, and this one is written and directed by Shawn Linden, stars Camille Sullivan, Devon Swire and Nick Stahl. And I suspect we'll get lumped in with a horror movie, but it's actually more of a thriller. And it focuses on this family, two adults and one teenage daughter, who live out in the wilderness. They live off the land, they're hunters. They essentially hunt animals and sell the fur for kind of like provisions and things like this. And they live a fairly simple life. And there is, we know through some exposition that there is a rogue wolf that has once menaced this family before that seems to have returned. And they are rightfully worried about it. However, when the husband is out trying to track this thing down, he finds some human bodies that seem to be the work of something other than a wolf, that may be able to be something far more sinister. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss Hunter x Hunter. First of all, I think the title is a little poor. To be honest with you, I understand what they were going for with that, but I wouldn't have chosen such a generic sounding title because it's going to be a bugger for search traffic. But anyway, this is a superbly acted movie. I have to say, I think the cast here do a great job of really making you believe these characters are just simple folks who enjoy that kind of simple lifestyle and don't really kind of want to change. I think there's a bit of friction between the kind of like husband and wife as they kind of want different things from for their daughter, for example. But it is, you know, very, very well acted. And I think that when you have a film like this, which is very much a character piece to a certain degree, you know, it kind of lives or dies if you have good performances. And I think that, you know, everyone here does a great performance. And Sullivan really carries the movie, to be honest with you. And, you know, I think she's excellent. The movie is also a masterclass of tension. There are certain scenes here that I feel work extremely well, where we have this kind of ever-present threat of this wolf. We're never going to quite know where it's going to come from. And then we have one scene, for example, where we have our three family members all in separate areas, and then they're all kind of getting spooked by something, and you don't know quite where the wolf is, if anywhere. And you know they're all kind of reacting to it, and it kind of like it's a great kind of like lesson in how kind of like to have tension without really ever really showing you any kind of like or payoff necessarily. I have to say as well, there's a very, very shocking moment within the movie right towards the end here. I'm not going to spoil it for you or anything, but suffice it to say, it's quite brutal in places. And because I think the movie is really a character piece and a very slow-moving thriller / drama up until then, when we kind of get to this kind of these final scenes and stuff, it hits hard when we do see it. Now the movie isn't gratuitous in any way, really, because there are certain scenes here that happen off screen, and we are, through reactions and things like that, it leaves our imaginations to kind of fill in the blanks. And I have kind of mixed feelings about it, to be honest with you, but I think the movie gets across the message that it's trying to do. So I think I'll give it the kind of the benefit of the doubt on that one, although I suspect some people may want things more kind of spelled out for them to a certain degree. It's beautifully shot. I think the dialogue all seems very natural and things like this. Do I have any issues with it? So, two issues I have with this movie. First of all, the police characters. We actually spend quite a lot of time with these kind of two police characters who have very little impact on the story when it's all said and done. There is a kind of a point where, you know, it kind of converges, shall we say, but they seem to have an unusually high amount of screen time for really no real impact on the actual story itself. I suspect, and to be honest with you, the story is quite slight, that maybe that was there to kind of somewhat fill up the runtime, unfortunately. Now, the story is quite slight, and a lot of it is filled with interpersonal drama and kind of dialogue scenes, and really just kind of like, a lot of the time, you know, no kind of dialogue, and it's just kind of scenes of the wilderness and things like that. But you don't feel bored in this film. I think the pacing's not an issue. The thing I would say is the movie does leave you to fill in a lot of blanks, and some I feel you can kind of get away with. For example, we learn that the wife has had an encounter with this wolf before, but we don't know anything about it other than that. So you can kind of fill in the blanks, and obviously from the dialogue that is in the movie, you can kind of piece together that it obviously was something pretty bad, because she kind of, you know, says she's in fear of it. So you kind of get that, yeah, okay, you can imagine something as bad has happened. It doesn't need to spell it out for you. And there's a couple of instances where I feel that works. However, there are a couple of instances where I feel it did need to kind of go into a little bit more detail. Now, for me, the main one was the husband makes a discovery in the woods. A macabre discovery in the woods, let me just say that. And his actions about how he handled that are somewhat questionable, and I think it needed more context in regards to flesh that decision out, because to me there just wasn't enough. There is a line of dialogue right late in the third act that kind of gives you some idea maybe, but because that's from another, not even the kind of the husband, it doesn't really go far enough to, I think, really get you to understand motivations of what his end game was, and how much of the things that he knew, things like this. So to me that was missing a little bit. And then the character, Nick Stoll's character, who we'll meet kind of later on, again a tad underdeveloped. It kind of gives you enough to have an idea what's going on there, but I felt like it could have done a little bit more with it. Not quite as, the main issue I have is the husband's discovery, to be honest with you. The next still lack of backstory, shall we say, I can kind of forgive, although I feel some people may have an issue with it. But I feel that the husband's reaction and his consequent dealing with what he discovers was a bit of an issue for me, because I did not feel the movie warranted not really addressing it, if that makes sense. However, overall, it's a well-acted, well-directed, and you know, quite shocking movie at times, which has an ever-present feeling of sort of dread, and you know, this kind of like this tension kind of building in kind of ebbs and flows, and I think that works very well. It is a slow-paced movie. You know, people who want lots of kind of like thrills and spills, it isn't this type of film. Or it's not really a kind of it's not really a horror film per se, but there are a couple of instances here where it has elements of horror films, if that makes sense. Overall, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It is a good movie. I just think it maybe could have fleshed out certain things and maybe pulled back on other things, in my opinion at least. 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.